Hey guys, what is up? It's Josh here, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 theme park soundtracks. I've been listening to them for quite a while now, and I thought it would be nice to make a list compiling my favourites. Now there are some soundtracks from parks all over the world on this list, so it's not biased to the UK. But I will be focusing more on areas of parks rather than the whole park in general when talking about a soundtrack, because I don't really feel like a park can have its own soundtrack unless of course you're Alton Towers. But without any further delay, let's get into the video. Now we're starting off with a soundtrack that I actually haven't heard until quite recently, and even though I'm yet to visit Blackpool Pleasure Beach, I feel like this soundtrack fits the ride perfectly. In terms of the theme that we're going for, it's not got much of a theme really, but I feel like the theme that they do have it works quite well with. And even taking away the ride, it's an incredible soundtrack. The fact that it starts off slow and then builds up later on the song probably really builds up the queue line atmosphere. And overall, it's just a really nice soundtrack to listen to. Now this is a soundtrack that you actually can't listen to too often because it's actually not been released outside of the park, which is also why the audio that you hear behind me is partially recorded. But the soundtrack fits the area so well that I had to give it a spot on here. It mixes the classic Thorpe Park jingle with a new Old Town soundtrack that I really love, and this is just the first of many Thorpe Park soundtracks to come on this list. IMETY have done some incredible soundtracks for the park, and this one's no different. I honestly think I might like the SPINBALL WHIZZER soundtrack more than the ride itself, and that's tough to say considering just how much I love SPINBALL WHIZZER, but this is just one of those feel-good soundtracks that gets you right in the mood to ride it. This is one of those soundtracks where you're just there standing in the queue line bopping. It also really complements the ride's pinball theming. In fact, the only thing that I can actually think of against this soundtrack is that it's only a minute long, but that's fine because the 1 minute loop that we do have is so good. WWDP Radio. This is probably the biggest feel-good soundtrack on this list. When you're walking into Thorpe Park or walking around Stealth and you hear this, you instantly just get happier. Okay, that wasn't the best description ever, but basically it's a good soundtrack. It starts off with a classic AMITY's 50 style tune, and then it goes back to the Thorpe Park classic tune. But they blend in so well together, it's just such a nice soundtrack to listen to. But they haven't actually released the soundtrack, so once again I am using some scavenged audio from behind. But I'd say if anything that actually makes it more special to listen to. But yeah, overall this is just a really great soundtrack. Believe it or not, this is one of those soundtracks that I haven't heard until quite recently, but it genuinely does seem like everyone seems to worship this soundtrack and the ride itself, and I definitely see where they were coming from with the soundtrack. It sounds like less something you'd hear at a theme park and more something you'd hear at a rave, but I must say, as with all of these, it does fit the area very well. I've actually never been to a park outside the UK, so I haven't had the chance to hear this soundtrack in person yet, but I'd love to get there in the next couple years. Just overall, IMETY did an incredible job with this soundtrack. This soundtrack is just a brilliant piece of music. It starts off slow and builds up the further along it goes. It also fits in perfectly with the ride's futuristic space theme, and it's genuinely one of the best soundtracks IMETY have ever produced. When you walk up to the Galactica area and you hear this soundtrack playing, it really gets you in the mood for what's to come. However, this still isn't the highest ranked Alton Towers soundtrack on this list. This is actually the on-ride soundtrack of the Max spinning coaster at Toverland, and this is another IMETY soundtrack. In fact, every single soundtrack bar one on this list is from the company. This plays out of the on-ride speakers, and it's an incredible piece of music, even taking away the ride. Now it might be the inferior Nemesis, but this soundtrack is everything but inferior to the original. It fits in perfectly with the jungle theme in the area and the ride itself. I love the traditional style instruments used in the soundtrack that have been mixed up with more modern song elements, and it just all blends together so well. When you add in that insane beat drop, it's a great soundtrack. I think I love this soundtrack a bit too much. Hearing it in the queue line, waiting for the best ride in the UK, it just really builds the mood in the Smiler area. It has lots of bass, has variety to an extent, and just hits hard while waiting, and of course it fits the ride absolutely perfectly, and it's exactly what Alton Towers were going for. I'm really not sure this soundtrack will ever be topped. This soundtrack is pretty much perfect, at least for the area it's in. It's got such a calming tone to it, while being happy, emotional, all those other emotions. IMETY did a phenomenal job with the Lost City soundtrack. It's just sad the soundtrack doesn't play more around the area. And that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please make sure you give it a like, as it helps the channel a lot and motivates me to make more content for you guys. I've got a lot of big videos coming out soon that are much more inventive than this one, so you'll want to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you all so much for watching, have a great day, and that's me, signing off.